Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today, we have Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. How are you this morning?
Good.
Good.
Better than the trade situation.
No kidding.
I think we need a new trade policy
Good idea.
because I think what we're doing, I think the administration and a few other people are detrading our system.
Yeah.
Not real trade. Everything is political. Political threats and sanctions, innuendos, and all kinds of trade things going on. But my thoughts today about what we're going to talk about is the Republican trade war is expanding dangerously.
Yeah.
We don't see it fading. We didn't see it. You know, in the past, they were so minor. There was a little bit of politics involved, not always good economic policy, but it was never such a big event. This is everything because it's so threatening. And the headline tells us a little bit here on this one that we picked up from Zero Hedge. And it says, Trump ready to hit China, India with 100% tariffs. Boy, that'll put a dent in the trade, won't it? To pressure Putin. But only if the Europeans do what we tell them.
Yeah.
As long as they join in and support our position, then we will finance whatever they want. So that's the atmosphere that we have now, and that can't be helpful. It can't be something that is going to improve the economy, and I think it's just going to aggravate the political conflict that's going on, because you can't do this in a sterile atmosphere, tinker around with prices and interest rates and all this, that somebody doesn't get hurt, and then it becomes very political. And that's what's going on right now. So I think that this is very, very serious. And the thing of it is, I think the outcome of all this is the unknowing. Not knowing what's going to happen. You know, if they were bad or good and they were announced and everybody knew they were going to be that way, you know, the business community would be able to figure it out and work around it and live with it. But that now, you know, I think they vacillate a little bit, you know, back and forth, threaten here, more so than any time I ever remember. We've heard talk over the years, you know, about the tariffs here and there. But this is a big thing, and I think it's getting awfully close to being very, very dangerous. And that when we look at what's going on in the world, we do see a lot of countries, arming themselves. And the modern weapons, nobody knows exactly who has what and how good they are. All I know is you can't depend on the politicians to solve our problem. The more rain we give the politicians, the more messed up it'll be. And right now, I think it's very messed up.
You know, it gets to be dizzying how quickly Trump changes his tune. It's like a broken jukebox, right?
Right.
Keeps playing a new record. Put that first one up now. As you say, Dr. Paul, Trump says he's ready to hit China and India with 100% tariffs to pressure Putin. Okay, because 4+ years of trying to pressure Putin have worked so well. And there's a catch, but only if Europe joins. They go on to say, in a curious reverse twist on a global trade war theme, President Trump told European officials he would impose draconian and sweeping new tariffs on India and China to push President Vladimir Putin to the negotiating table with Ukraine. But with one condition, EU nations must do so as well. Interestingly enough, Dr. Paul, I was looking it up. The U.S. so far this year, and this is September, they have bought $775 million worth of uranium from Russia. So we should probably also be sanctioning ourselves. But the thing is, you remember back in April when it was Liberation Day and he announced all the tariffs. Well, the purpose of the tariffs was we're going to put trillions of dollars in our coffers and send everyone a check and everything is coming up roses. Well, it turns out it wasn't about that at all. It's about sanctions. It's not tariffs. It's about punishment. So for me, at least, Dr. Paul, this seems like a move of desperation. He doesn't know what to do. He likes to do bluster. He likes to do bullying. But in the end, it's just a bluff. And this seems like a bluff as well. And if it isn't a bluff, and maybe you can see if you agree with this, Dr. Paul, if they put 100% tariffs on China, our Walmarts are going to be empty. And you're going to have a real revolution here in the streets when people go into empty Walmarts because there's nothing in the store.
Sometimes I think it's an argument over property lines. Individuals in this country might have arguments over property, and they work it out in the courts where the boundaries are. But in this case, the boundaries are destined to be changed, and we have participating in a major way after World War I, after World War II, and we're in the middle of all this now. We're the leaders of all this. It's different. They didn't have a world going on, but the stage is set for a world. There's a lot of world wide countries right now that are very much at each other. So it's land, it's resources, and there's so much wealth in the world. A little bit of common sense could certainly, if it was distributed in a voluntary manner and reward people who do the right thing and make sure that that nothing is obtained through force, it would be so different because there's so much wealth. I remember there was a time a few decades ago where somebody in Congress said it's the end of oil. Oil had ended.
Peak oil.
And it wasn't true. There's so many discoveries. There's so much wealth and there's so much talent. But it seems like the ones who have the money and they have the talent seem to want to keep that. The only way they can keep it or enlarge on it is to punish the other people and squeeze them out and make it more difficult. And that is a lot of what is going on right now.
I think one of the problems may be that Trump is listening to people that have no idea what they're talking about. And you probably caught this clip with Peter Navarro, his top economic advisor, a couple of days ago, saying if we can just, force India to stop trading with Russia, the Russian economy will collapse. It's on the verge of collapse. Well, this is what they said just literally days into the special military operation into Ukraine. Remember, it was the EU Commissioner von der Leyen who said Russia's economy is in tatters. Tatters, I tell you. That was 4 years ago, or 3 years ago.
But I like your suggestion the best to how to solve this problem of those Russians sneaking and selling their own oil, and they didn't even ask us that. You said, maybe we ought to sanction ourselves.
Yeah, sanction ourselves.
We're still in business with them to the tune of billions of dollars.
Billions.
There's a whole list of very important stuff we trade and buy from China, from Russia. So it's a lot of hypocrisy there.
The thing is, it's really not that complicated to understand. Just put yourselves in their shoes. Russia views NATO on their doorstep as an existential issue. They view it as a threat. They will continue this military operation until they meet their goals, as I hope to God our own country would do if we had a real threat on our border, a real threat to our existence. I would hope they wouldn't stop midway, get rid of the threat. That's kind of what we have a military for. Instead, we're using it overseas everywhere, ignoring the real threats closer to home.
But very few people understand that history, this recent history leading up to 2014, and that is that we had made a lot of promises. And, there was a time 10 years ago, they might say, well, they were vague, but they weren't written down and it wasn't determined. We don't know exactly. But now they have fine. Yeah. It's almost like you have to search the information to prove what the position really was. And our position was very strong. And of course, we were moving into the kingdom and we were running things, and we had to have the military strength, and we had to have the reserve currency of the world. So the United States has gotten that, but now we're in the mess, and it's almost exactly opposite of free and voluntary trade between countries. And they call us the isolationists. Yeah. And look how they're isolating the world with sanctions and barriers and punishments and militarism, and they call that capitalism.
But the National Security Archive at George Washington University is an important resource of source documents, of real original source documents. And as you say, they do have that document there. Now, there are several, but this one is explicit with the promise that NATO wouldn't expand. So anyone who says it was just verbal is not correct. That document really does exist.
Right.
But on this India business, let's skip ahead one and go to this one later Tuesday. So that would be, yesterday. Later Tuesday, Trump wrote a social media post that the U.S. and India were continuing negotiations to address their trade barriers and expressed optimism that the two would reach an agreement to resolve their dispute. He also said he looked forward to, quote, speaking with my good friend Prime Minister Narendra Modi in coming weeks. The fact is, this is delusional. At least according to press reports, he's attempted to call Modi 4 times in the last couple of weeks, and Modi will not take his phone call because Modi is furious at how disrespectfully India is being treated by the U.S. for the crime, quote unquote, of buying Russian oil. The Americans said, Europe, you can't buy Russian oil. The Europeans said, we're not going to buy Russian oil. So the Indians said, we're not going to tank our economy. We'll buy the oil and we will refine it and we will make money. So the idea, on the one hand, he put 50% tariffs on India. Now he threatens 100% tariffs on India. Then he says, I can't wait to talk to my good friend Modi. It's just delusional.
In the news last week, there was an item that was written by Anselon.
Yeah.
And
Kyle.
I was fascinated with the title of that article. And it says, Trump, looks like we lost India and Russia. That's before all this real nonsense came up. But he was one step ahead in the game. That the whole dumb thing has been lost. And it's also so much wasted energy and wasted funds and maldistribution. I mean, the whole thing seems to be designed to take from some people, not by hard work and effort and providing great services, but to maneuver it. I mean, that's what the monetary system does. You put the money and you impoverish the poor people. And you're claiming that we're going to help welfare. And it's, of course, the one thing that I get tired of is, yes, but you got to have democracy. Democracy means a dictatorship of the majority, and right now the majority has most of the money. And if they're related to the deep state, they have control over the printing presses too. Yeah. Who's creating the money?
Absolutely. Well, go to that next one because this is what you're talking about, Dr. Paul. Trump looks like we lost India and Russia to China. Okay, might be true. But what would a normal person do? They would say, I wonder why. I wonder why we, quote unquote, lost India and Russia. But he doesn't do that. Instead, he sends out a Truth Social post. I'll just read a little bit of this article from Kyle Anzalone. President Donald Trump, this is from the 5th, posted on his Truth Social account that India and Russia are now firmly tied to China and have drifted away from U.S. orbit. Trump also demanded that Europe end Russian oil imports and place pressure on China. Here's a quote from Trump. Looks like we've lost India and Russia to deepest, darkest China. May they have a long and prosperous future together, he wrote. It almost sounds like he's sort of jealous and bitter. But what does China do with Russia and India that we don't? They simply trade. They don't tell Russia and India how to conduct their business. They don't tell them about human rights. They don't tell them about what sorts of laws they should have, what sort of churches they should have. They simply do business. So nobody wants to do business with the U.S. anymore because we don't do business.
Our government acts as if China's like they were in the 1950s.
Yeah.
But China, on not too few occasions, some of the policies they do, I said, they're acting more market-oriented than we are. They understand it, but they also understand, the power of governments too. So but it's very precise, and I think that's why it's a shame. We fear, the United States fears them, and I think in a way there's jealousy going. Well, we can't, we may be 10 times richer than the country, but still we're insecure. We say, oh, what are we going to do about this? Yeah. And they've cheated.
Yeah,
they're
always cheating
on the trade.
Yeah. Remember, I think it was Trump who said that China actually stole our plans for hypersonic weapons from us. Okay. It's delusional.
But they need to hire a couple of
yeah. So it really does smack of desperation, the whole thing does. He's angry, he's happy, he wants a telephone call, he wants to put on tariffs. Remember our good friend Gerald Celente and his kind of catchphrase, and it's absolutely correct. He always says this: when all else fails, they take you to war. And that's the danger part. And in fact, if you can, just going to talk about this for a second, this is, I think, an example of that desperation. Trump cynically writes, "Here we go," in reaction to Russia-Poland drone incident. Now, this is something that happened last night, Dr. Paul. Apparently, a few Russian drones veered into Polish airspace. And the Poles, of course, were ready to declare World War III because that's what they've wanted. The Europeans have wanted to drag the U.S. in for a long time. But Trump took the bait, it looks like, and he said, "What's with Russia violating Poland's airspace with drones? Here we go," which is kind of a dangerous thing to say. Go to the next one. The Hedge writes, "It's a bit ominous, given it sounds, depending on the president's intent, a bit like George Bush's infamous 'let's roll.'" Russia rejected Polish and Ukrainian accusations that it sent a drone swarm to attack Poland, a longtime NATO member, but likely the U.S. will try to manufacture leverage over Moscow with this incident. So this has happened, Dr. Paul, and not to say that it's fine, but this has happened many, many times during this war. Some of the times they've actually been Ukrainian missiles that were trying to intercept Russian missiles and they fell into Poland. That's happened a couple times. But, at this time, they're going to grab a hold of this and try to make it much more than it is.
Whether or not we have war, theoretically, we have actual war when the people say, let's go to war, and they declare war, and it's official. But right now, we're not at war, and we're trying to work for peace and all the nonsense they talk about. But the pictures are devastating, whether it's in Gaza or whether it's in Ukraine. The destruction of the cities. I mean, it looks like it's been a nuclear weapon in some of the cities. It was so totally destroyed. So there's a lot more activity than I think most. When I see it, and I'm a bit surprised, it's so complete that you can imagine the people trying to make a living and survive the inflation here are wondering about that, because it's not a declared war. But declare war and have a draft, and they might wake up.
Yeah, that might do it.
I'm not advising that.
No. But just the last thing about this, they're desperate to make this into something that is a casus belli. If you put that next one on, now this is what actually happened. The department stated at night, this is Belarus Ministry of Defense. The department stated last night there was a mutual exchange of UAV strikes between Russia and Ukraine. Some drones lost their course due to electronic warfare and entered Belarusian and Russian airspace. Now, this is interesting. Some drones were destroyed by Belarusian air defense forces. So, according to Belarus, take it or leave it, they recognized that there were some Russian drones that had veered off course, and they actually shot them down. And from 2,300 hours to 400 hours, Belarus exchanged air situation data with Poland and Lithuania, warning them about approaching unidentified drones. This allowed Warsaw to promptly deploy air defense forces. So if it indeed was a Russian drone swarm, then why would Belarus be tipping off Poland, given that they're enemies? Now, one final thing on this, I don't want to drag this out, but I think it's important. If you put on the next one, Mats Nilsson, who is a good analyst from say Sweden. I'm going to say I've been on some panels with Mats. I know he's a really smart guy, but he publishes a photo of one of these drones, and he says Polish media published new photos of a drone that allegedly crashed in Poland. According to the Poles, 7 drones had already been found, 6 in the Lublin voivodeship bordering Ukraine and Belarus, 1 in Łódź voivodeship, central Poland, and 1 in the Warmian-Masurian voivodeship, close to Lithuania. Now, this is an important point. Recall that, according to experts, the Gabera drones in the photos are not capable of reaching Poland. So the question is their origin. I know it's kind of fine point here, but if they want to try to make a war out of this, they're going to try to do it,
Yeah, and sometimes I think they can go right up to the edge. I think they're probably a sliver of truth when they say, no, we don't want war, but they want to get as much as they can without the actual war breaking out. And they think they can get away with it, not realizing that it's always a war against their own people. Now, the war is right now, the major sufferers, when you look at numbers and amounts, it's the people in this country that are in the lower income bracket, because they're, today they had a statistic out that says, oh, the PPI was a little bit lower than they thought, and yet I am convinced that the people who are still shopping and know about it, they can't say this was supposed to be a good news story because inflation was settling down. But one stat I got a kick out of because they've traditionally said, well, this is what the CPI show, but excluding housing and energy, it's not so bad. This was said excluding housing and energy and trade. Anything that was traded. And then they came up with, inflation got better. The only thing good about this is people get more disgusted with the garbage coming out of the officials in Washington, and it's bipartisan, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. Take everything out of it. We're doing well. The last one we want to talk about a little bit is Mike Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador to Israel. Or is it the other way around? I'm never quite sure with Huckabee. But that next one up, Huckabee says the U.S. won't tell Israel not to annex the occupied West Bank. U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, said the U.S. has never asked Israel to not apply sovereignty, referring for the possibility of Israel annexing parts of Israel-occupied West Bank. He says, I repeatedly stated the U.S. respects Israel as a sovereign nation and will not tell Israel what to do. That's also what Rubio said as of last week, to which we would probably say that's fine, except we're the ones paying the bill for it. We're the ones backstopping them.
And I think one thing that gets people interested in this before the massive killing and starvation went on was the fact that the Palestinians and other Muslim Arabs would lose their homes. They just come in and with expansion, and that's going on. I mean, this is essentially what Huckabee was endorsing. Just marching in. That would be like if Mexico come in and took our property. I bet we'd get a little bit annoyed.
There's a funny, not really funny, but a funny clip of an Israeli taking a Palestinian's home, and he says to her, if I don't take it, someone else will. And that's the idea.
That's a real moral rational.
So here, now go to the next one. Now this is Huckabee agreeing with Smotrich. Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich recently outlined a proposal for annexing 82% of the West Bank and leaving 6 Palestinian population centers isolated as islands. Huckabee has also made clear that the Trump administration doesn't oppose the recent major expansion of illegal Jewish settlements in the West Bank, which Smotrich said would, quote, erase the idea of a Palestinian state. See, now the reason why Huckabee likes that, Dr. Paul, is, as you've said many times, he says, well, the Palestinians aren't a people anyway. They're not a people, so who cares if we erase them, even though they've been there for generations?
What if we could have the authority to pick and choose all the people that we would decide you're not a people?
Well, so there's a guy in Germany that did that about 80 years ago, right? He decided certain types were not people.
And for a year or two, they might get away with it. But my thoughts as I looked at this is, why are we there? It's none of our business. If it is our business and you want to get involved, we will not stop you at the borders. You can go over there and do whatever you want. You can take your money or whatever. If there's a declared war, the story's different. But if you have a strong opinion about this, but you do not have the right to just raise the taxes or increase the inflation by just printing the money and supporting adventures like this. Because we have to realize if this policy is wrong, the American people are, responsible. It's not like, oh no, I don't have, what can I do about these guys? These are bad guys. But when the people get annoyed enough, that's how governments get changed. And we still do have a token ability to change people in this government in a pretty peaceful manner. But there's a lot of cheating and stealing going on, and we've witnessed that in the last 15 or 20 years. And so this is something that is very costly. We lose our liberties, we lose our finances, and we feel helpless in what to do. And that, of course, is why we come and talk about this, to try to get people interested in it. Because, if it is true that some ideas, good ideas, can't be stopped by, just bullying around, a lot of noise and a lot of force, and armies can't stop it. If the principles of liberty and peace are correct, they will not be squelched to the point where nobody can talk about them. Because just think of how many times, even in this country, and at times now, I think we still have to do it. We have to be careful what we say, or we'll be silenced, and that has happened already. So that is a shame. So, yes, the freedom that we have in this country is shrinking. We ought to make the best use of it to make sure that we have as many people as possible that agrees that there's a better system, because this one is going to end. And the Marxists already have that plan, and they are just wringing their hands. But I would say it's not necessary if we can just wake up enough people to what's really going on.
Amen. Absolutely. Well, I'm going to sign off thanking everyone for watching the show today. And I'm going to say, don't forget to tune in tomorrow. We have a special guest joining us tomorrow live on the Liberty Report, and that's our great friend, Colonel Doug McGregor. He's going to come in. We're going to talk about current events. We're going to talk about a project that he's working on, and it's just always good to catch up with him. So set your reminders to watch the Liberty Report live tomorrow at noon Eastern Time. Dr. Paul, myself, and Colonel McGregor. Over to you, Dr. Paul.
Very good. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report, and just remind you once again that one of our goals is to spread the message of peace and prosperity, because we believe it's achievable, not perfectly, but we don't believe that dictators are perfect either, and they are short-lived as well in most cases. So there's every reason in the world to participate. One thing is, you meet a lot of nice people when you meet people who want to change the world for the better, without using force to do so. And that's what people fail to understand, that if you have something, you have to use force. I think the trade war and some of these other things going on that we're in charge of is an act of aggression. Having a currency that you can use and inflate and hurt the poor people, that's aggression. And right now, there's an understanding even that is under attack, because people are starting to realize how it works, where people just want the government to spend money, and then they print the money, and all of a sudden prices go up. They have to understand that the problem lies in the hands of the people who tolerate the spending of big government. Right now, it's sad, but there's a lot of endorsement in a bilateral sense for the continuation of the spending in the military budget. That does not include all of them, because there's a resistance building, but they do look at that and they want to do it. There's too many people that should understand that if you're dropping bombs and looking for a fight and getting involved in all of these things, it eventually ends up with us losing our liberties and you losing our wealth. I want to thank you for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.